Look, Luke, I find it altogether entirely improper for you to be wanting us to do this film. I really don't know what games you're trying to play here, but they have to stop right now.
Why don't we go to Beardsley College instead? Isn't that what that's the college, right?
Yeah, it's ironic that I go to Beardsley College when I shave twice a day.
I do love the way James Mason says Beardsley College. It's great. Beardsley College, like that. That is top tier acting right there.
I find that quite a queer name, don't you? Beardsley College. I'm sure it's filled with utter gaiety.
And filthy boys.
Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past. We give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host Michael, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Luke, and this week we are celebrating the 60-year anniversary of the release of the film Lolita, and it also just so happens, or does it just so happen, perhaps not, I was thinking about it today. We're recording this on Father's Day, and was that intentional, Luke? Because there is an interesting association there.
It was not.
Yeah, that's okay. That's really interesting because I was kind of watching this and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is a funny film to be watching on Father's Day."
Oh god, I mean, look, this movie is if only we could all be great fathers like
Humbert.
Like Humbert. So good they named him twice.
I know, yeah.
Humbert. But anyway, yes, Michael, like you said, we are reviewing Lolita today, a 1962 psychological comedy drama film directed by, as you said, Stanley Kubrick. It is the 60-year anniversary of it, and obviously this is a famous movie, and it covers some very interesting topics. So we shall get into that, and of course it is based on the 1955 novel of the same name by Vladimir Nabokov, who is also credited with writing the screenplay. Did you know that, Michael?
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yes.
Authors who become screenplay writers, they're always great.
Okay, so the movie stars James Mason, who of course we were doing an impression of in our cold open,
Yes.
Shelley Winters, Peter Sellers, and Sue Lyon. You see, it's Lyon. Is it Sue Lyon or Sue Lyon?
So I guess it's Lyon?
Yes.
Yeah, I would probably pronounce it Lyon, but I bet in America they pronounce Versailles, so
Yeah, Versailles, yeah. Sue Olympic Lyonnaise. That's her name, full name. So the movie was released on June the 13th, 1962 in the United States. So yeah, we are almost at the 60-year anniversary. And of course, the fact that we're recording this on Father's Day is just perfect. And so, Michael, can you guess what the budget was for Lolita?
No, I can't. Okay. I feel like this film obviously... So this film would have been cheap in some sense, of course, because there's not really too much to what there is to it. I think I'm right in saying that Peter Sellers was something of a box office draw in his day, and therefore maybe he commanded a reasonably high wage. That's kind of what I'm almost thinking. I feel like they spent more on casting than anything else, but I say that as someone who doesn't really know the relative fame for the time of these actors. But with all of that said, it's all immaterial because I'm not really sure about how it's going to work out with inflation and all that. Let's just go for... like the inflation and things. I mean, is it 400,000? Oh
my god, you are so off. So you are less than half because it is 1.5 to 2 million. And I honestly thought you were going to get it because I thought you were like, a million, a couple million, but no, you went for very cheap. So yeah, that's a mark against you.
Yeah, I will say that in my defense, I like to think that was more of a not quite sure about, the value of money at the time situation.
Okay, well, you know what? Let's go. Let's see if you do better on the box office. How much do you think this made at the box office?
10 billion. So I think this film was a success. So obviously, at least let's say. I think it was a success, but what does a success mean? I'm kind of thinking like 20 million.
You've gone over.
Oh.
You've gone more than double, which is of course over. Yes, the second time it's happened this year where you've gone less than half of the box office and less than half the budget and more than double the box office. So if you started off your guess by saying like 10 billion. If you had said 10 million, it would have been quite accurate or very close because it's 9.2.
Oh, yeah, okay.
9.2 million. Interestingly, this is a fascinating fact. Did you know there was a remake of Lolita
Starring Jeremy Irons.
starring Jeremy Irons back in 1997?
Yeah, I don't know anything about it, but I think I just saw it when I was, looking around for
child porn.
Yes. Oh no. Oh dear. No. Looking around for this film because we're reviewing it. I know that might sound like a convenient alibi, but we are indeed reviewing this film, so I think it should hold up.
So here's the fascinating fact about the 1997 Lolita. That movie had a budget of 62 million, right? 62 million. How much do you think it grossed at the box office, Michael?
So it had a budget of 62 million.
Yes.
I think it grossed 6.2 million.
Well, so that would make it less than the 1962 version, which would be quite remarkable.
That would be quite funny.
Inflation.
Well, I don't know. Okay.
No, you're right.
Yep.
It did. It did gross lower than the 1962 version did the 1997 version, and it only grossed incredibly $1.1 million.
Yeah.
From a $62 million budget. That has to be one of the all-time box office bombs, like in history. That's incredible. So yeah, people weren't ready for Lolita in 1997. I guess they weren't socially progressive enough, but they were in the 1960s.
1960s was a hell of a time.
I know, right, Michael? So that's the 1997 failed remake. So, Michael, let's go through whether we liked this movie. Did you?
Yes, I did like this movie. I thought it had what they call in the business intrigue, and I think a satisfactory kind of black comedic bent to it, where it was like, obviously, the thing is, I do find it funny because I'm not entirely sure how this film was supposed to be received or was received at the time. Because, like you say, in the 1960s, people were weird. My perception of this film is, like I say, that it's kind of like a black comedy with this like kind of psychological intrigue element to it. And,
Yeah, that's how critics received it at the time.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool. Okay, yeah. And with that said, I thought it was good. It was fun. And, I would say I enjoyed it. And I was intrigued.
So I looked at one review, for instance. You talked about how it was received at the time. And it said Kubrick was an intellectual director with little feeling for erotic tension. One is more readily disposed to accept Kubrick's alternative approach as legitimate. So yes, it was less erotic tension, more dark comedy. But I think that's maybe, we'll talk about this throughout the review, maybe that was the path Kubrick was forced to go down because he couldn't really put a lot of what was in the novel on the screen in terms of the erotic scenes between Lolita and
we weren't quite at cuties. Lolita walked so cuties could run.
Obviously, this movie, I will say, did I like it? Yes, I think this is a better movie than Cuties, for instance. I enjoyed it, but I have to say, we are going to, throughout this review, we're going to compare it to the novel, because of course, the novel is
Yes, you mentioned that, and I'm interested in that because I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, and it is interesting, the differences. Some differences I like, some differences I don't. But the differences I don't like, the changes within the movie. Again, maybe Kubrick felt he had to go down this path because, there were some things that had to get cut out, and therefore things needed to be changed, given what I read from what is in the novel. So anyway, Michael, how many nitpicks do you have?
I have one nitpick.
Okay, you go first.
Okay, so the one nitpick is kind of an obvious one, but like him reading aloud to himself when he gets the letter, like it kind of feels like a weird thing because it's like, I don't know, back in the day, I guess like with films, they just didn't really care about that whole thing. Like nowadays, if you saw that in like an actual film, like made nowadays, you'd be like, that's just such a stupid cliche to have someone like pick a letter and just read it out loud to themselves. But yeah, I decided to impose my standards, now viewing that as a pretty dumb way to reveal the contents of a letter.
Yes. So my nitpick is that the main character is a nonce, and that's wrong.
Oh wow, Luke, what virtue signaling? Wow.
I don't agree with it.
Whoa.
I don't agree.
I didn't realize you were so woke.
I know, right? I'm gonna hopefully write an article soon about why Lolita is problematic.
Good.
The movie, of course. Not the character, but yeah. So let's get into the plot or the concept of this movie, Michael. So the film follows Humbert, a middle-aged literature lecturer who becomes sexually infatuated with Dolores Hayes, nicknamed Lolita. I have to say, maybe I should have put this as a nitpick. It's quite a big jump to go from Dolores to Lolita.
Yeah.
Yeah, a young adolescent girl. And yeah, so this movie is just about him just trying to, I guess, capture this girl who, of course, like we said, he's become infatuated with when he's like 4 times her age. And yeah, this movie, Michael, is why Epstein exists. You know,
Yes.
This is I feel like this movie could be like the Fight Club for Hollywood pedophiles.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, when like they view it not as a negative thing but as an aspiration. You know, maybe that's what I'm thinking. But I mean, look, I was just thinking while watching this movie, like obviously, you know, it talks a bit about Hollywood at the end with fucking Claire Quilty going to Hollywood. And of course, Kubrick has made other movies like Eyes Wide Shut.
Yes.
And also The Shining, which kind of deal with the, I guess, sexual underbelly of society, shall we say. And particularly, you know, maybe Hollywood is one of those. And I was just thinking, because we did, of course, Attack of the Clones last week. What a great transition. And of course, who directed Attack of the Clones, Michael? It was George Lucas.
Yes.
And who can forget him and Steven Spielberg debating over how old, in the Raiders of the Lost Ark movie, how old, what's she called? The girl that
Marianne
Indiana
Ravenwood?
Jones, yes, how old Marianne was when Indiana Jones first had a relationship with her. So Lucas and Spielberg wanted her to be 11 years old. And
yes.
And they said, if it's 16, it's not that interesting. And of course, Indiana Jones was 25 at the time. So yeah, I think they settled on like 14, which I think I remember I called like the Hollywood Compromise. Like,
yeah.
Like the visionary director, how old he wants the relationship to be, or how old he wants the girl to be, and how, you know, what age would be acceptable for the girl to be, and then they come in between for the compromise. Yeah, but yeah, and of course, even in Attack of the Clones, in the movie we reviewed last week, you know, a young boy being trafficked into a religious cult by older men who don't have sex with women. And of course, Padme is horny for him, despite being about 10 years older. So
no, yeah,
you know.
yeah, they do have some weird ideas. I don't see when I was watching this film,
and these are popular movies, Michael.
Peter Sellers kind of reminded me, like his character with like his kind of nervous tics, kind of reminded me of Woody Allen, and it made me think about, Rainier Wolfcastle in The Simpsons classic impression. I'm a neurotic nerd who likes to have sex with little girls. And I was thinking about, here's my Woody Allen impression.
Yeah, and that is Claire Quilty in this movie.
Yeah.
But you know, Humbert isn't a neurotic nerd. He's a charming paedophile.
Yeah.
You know, he's a paedophile who you could take home to your parents. And
yes.
But obviously, seriously, like, you know, Kubrick, of course, has explored these themes in his movies. It's something that he's interested in, maybe because he knows what sometimes goes on, and you know, considering that conversation between Lucas and Spielberg, and what Spielberg has put in his other movies, it's interesting. Of course, these are two powerful people in Hollywood. All you know, we're not accusing them of anything. We're just saying it's interesting. And obviously, this is David Lynch's favorite Kubrick movie as well. I read that, and of course, you know, David Lynch explored sexual abuse of, I guess, a child or a young adult in Twin Peaks. I don't know if you've heard of that. Or... I know of
the show. I've never seen it, but I also didn't know he directed it or produced it. Or story ran it. Something. So
it was a TV show. He, you know, ran it and wrote it for 2 seasons, and yeah, it was honestly that first episode is one of the greatest, maybe the greatest. I will say it's the best ever opening to a TV show I've ever seen. The first episode of Twin Peaks. He then afterwards did a movie called Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me, which was like a prequel to the Twin Peaks TV series, and that movie Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me really did explore the sexual abuse of the main character Laura Palmer more than the TV show, because the TV show was really about a mystery rather than like who killed her, rather than exploring what happened to her. Of course it did, but you know, the movie really did that, and it did it really well. So yeah, David Lynch, this is his favorite Kubrick movie. So yeah, let's get into what happens in this movie, Michael. Lolita. This is right at the start. Claire Quilty, drunk and incoherent, plays Frédéric Chopin's Polonaise on the piano before being shot to death by Humbert. Look, that's his
name.
nickname. Yeah. I think this is such a great start to the movie.
Yeah.
You have the ping pong balls out of the dressing gown, which was just amazing. Peter Sellers, who's of course the actor who plays Claire Quilty, just knocks it out of the park, Michael. You know, he's hitting aces all the time, you know, to use a ping pong analogy. Yeah, like it's truly incredible.
By the way, Roman ping pong, I think we should specify.
Yes, of course, Roman ping pong. But, you know, it is truly an incredible opening. What a character this guy is, and what a performance from him, don't you think?
No, yeah, I definitely agree. I think, like, that really makes the film work. And, you know, like, yeah, in these films, sometimes people will be like, oh, the acting was a bit, you know, weird by today's standards. But in this case, it works. Like, and it feels very real because, like, oh, they're eccentric weirdos anyway. So that works out conveniently. And yeah, like, he plays... Yes, I mean, I gave this film credit for the intrigue it creates, and that opening scene really sets it up perfectly when it comes to intrigue, and also, yeah, kind of like the performance of these two characters makes you think, oh man, like I want to know what was going on between these two guys, which, yeah, very interesting, very engaging.
Yeah, you're right. It's a fascinating opening. It really does hook you because of the weirdness of the scene, like you say. You know, you want to know the backstory, but in the novel, of course... This is the difference. Humbert hints throughout the novel that he has committed murder. Its actual circumstances are not described until near the very end. So Brett Anthony from NPR notes that the novel is sort of an inverted murder mystery. The reader knows someone has been killed, but the reader has to wait to find out who the victim is. So I don't know what you think is better. Like, oh, who did Humbert kill? Did he kill Lolita? Did he kill Quilty? Did he kill
It's
Lolita's
a bit like
new husband?
It makes you think about American Beauty, where like it starts off telling you that Kevin Spacey, oh my lord, you can't escape these people, but it starts off telling you that Kevin Spacey is going to die. But so then obviously if you've got that in the back of your head, and obviously I mean it kind of introduces the whole like fake out of that weird, but whatever. Yeah, the thing is like that's kind of an example again of where like the fact the character's going to die is said up front. But yeah, the question is then revealing how it happens. Whereas, of course, in this case, it's slightly different because it's like you already know how it happens.
Who killed Lester Burnham? Was it his underage? Was it his daughter's underage friend? Was that it? No, of course it was. It was the
gay guy
next door. Yeah, the gay guy. Yes, from next door. But yeah, I think each are fine really. You can be intrigued by this is a very weird scene. Wow, I wonder what led to this situation, or I wonder who. Humbert kills at the end. It could be Lolita's, like I said, husband. It could be Lolita herself, or Quilty, or I don't know, someone else. So yeah, what led him to that? But again, that scene right at the start is a great opening scene. So either are fine. But anyway, so Humbert, who is appalled and attracted to the vulgarity of American culture, like most British people, I think. So yeah, he goes to this house in America, in New Hampshire. And, the mother, Charlotte Hayes, is putting, him off from living here. He's not going to come back. But then, he walks out into the garden and sees Lolita, and he switches on a dime.
I've actually forgotten the tune to the song that you said.
You were just singing it before.
Yeah, but now I have the Twin Peaks theme tune in my head where it goes, do, do, do.
That triggers your memory, right?
Yeah. Makes me want to go stay in New Hampshire, if you get what I mean. I feel like that should become like a euphemism in Hollywood. Like when they become get that certain affinity for younger individuals, they should be like, makes me want to go stay in New Hampshire.
Or Ramsdale maybe, because that's the town. New Hampshire's a bit broad.
Yeah.
Like, what, do you want to vote in an early primary
that's
or something?
That's a good point, actually, yeah. You know how they say like when the trees start speaking Vietnamese, I feel like this should be like, I don't know, when the Hollywood movie producers start playing this song. Okay. Why do I hear, like little kids, why do I hear boss music?
Okay, right. Anyway, so he sees Lolita does Humbert and he switches on a dime. Now, we need to choose our words very carefully here, Michael, because we need to describe the appeal of Lolita in the scene
without
to
expressing
Humbert.
that enthusiasm ourselves, I see.
Yes. So obviously she's wearing a bikini and sunglasses, and you have this music in the background, and she's sitting in this picturesque garden. For Humbert, who is of course a paedophile, I can see why this image was tantalising to him. I think the introduction to Lolita has to be has to be that. It has to be tantalising to Humbert, and I think Kubrick does that very well. You can see why he himself would fall for Lolita, having seen her just in the back of the garden, don't you think?
No, yeah, I definitely agree. Like it runs that whole, and like I think at some point he kind of like explains how he's like into her, but I guess that's like as he gets into it, obviously, kind of as he has like this I guess deeper, which I don't want to say deeper to legitimize it, but like more substantial affinity for her.
Yes.
But yeah, on the base level, yeah, he's just like, oh look, it's a woman, and you can see her body.
Well, it's not a woman.
Sorry, it's a girl.
It's the central point of the movie.
Yes,
it's not a woman.
That's a good point. Yes, look, it's a girl, and you can see her body very exposed. And
yes,
Humphrey, he thinks, oh, I'm into that.
Humbert, Michael.
Oh yeah, sorry, I don't like that he's called
literally
Humbert.
His name is only Humbert, and it's in there twice.
Humbert, yeah. I think in my head, like I always think of him as either Herbert or Humphrey, because those are like two names I know of. But Humbert, I don't know, like
yeah, those were your friends growing up in school, weren't they?
Yeah, Humphrey and Herbert.
Okay.
Harrow.
Okay, right, but I love when the mother asks, what was the decisive factor? There's a very nice moment there. Good comedic line. But yeah, basically, yeah, Humbert has to get just like drawn in immediately. And, Kubrick, he shoots that very well, and he knows exactly how a paedophile, what would entice them into this situation, I guess. And of course, we are saying paedophile a lot, Michael.
Oh yeah. It's important. I think we all need to make a really important distinction. I don't think our viewers would forgive us if we didn't make the distinction between a paedophile and an ephebophile. There's a very important distinction, which is that they're spelled differently.
There's one. What's the one that's higher? Isn't it a hebephile?
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. There's I don't know what. I think okay. I'm gonna have to see. We're saying this, but I don't know what.
No, because I remember it's somewhere on the Wikipedia page. Paedophile is like the lowest in terms of age and in terms of morality.
Okay, I got it. So yeah, hebephilia is the strong, persistent sexual interest by adults in pubescent children who are in early adolescence, typically ages 11 to 14. So now we have to find out what's a ephebophile.
That's the one.
Yeah, I'm guessing a ephebophile is like 15.
14 to 17. Yeah. Yeah, I just went on the Wikipedia page. Is the primary? I don't know what website you're on. The primary sexual interest in later adolescence, so ages 15 to 19, is ebophilia. So yeah, damn, that's 19. It's quite old. I mean, whoever's going after Gemma Owen, I think that's her name on Love Island. They're
that's a weird grouping together. I feel like basically there should be a word for being attracted to somebody who's young enough to be your daughter. There should be a specific word for that.
Yeah. Okay.
Regardless of their age.
But like you said, we'll just stick to the word we all know and love, of course,
Pedophile.
Which is Michael. Pedophile. Exactly. Yes. We get some more comedic scenes with Lolita and Humbert getting closer. The horror movie scene is good. But in the novel, the first mutual attraction between Humbert and Lolita begins before, because Humbert resembles a celebrity she likes. And I don't know, that feels to me like it makes more sense. It's like, why does Lolita like this old guy?
Yeah.
Well, it looks kind of like a movie star. That would make more sense. What do you think?
No, yeah, that does make sense. The aspect of like, I think like her being attracted to him is underdeveloped in the film. I think to an extent you could, just say like, well, because like women are attracted to one of the things that is true is that women are attracted to weird people. Like there's literally the whole SNL sketch about like, why is Benedict Cumberbatch hot? I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's like an SNL thing. It's like the quiz show guys just like, why is Benedict Cumberbatch hot? And yeah, I personally am very much of that opinion. Like you'll have like, I don't know, I bet there are like 14, 15-year-old girls out there who are like, oh, Benedict Cumberbatch, he's really hot. And yet if I saw that in a film, I'd be like, wait, she's attracted to this guy? But
Cumberbatch is a bit different because he's like 15 years younger.
Yeah, okay,
was anyway,
no, yeah, that is true, yeah.
And people were mad about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just want to say, in the film, obviously, it occurs that a drive-in horror film, which,
yes.
when she grabs his hand.
Yeah, that's a very kind of odd scene because it's like very quick and almost just like...
Well, I'll tell you something interesting. So the scene is from Christopher Lee's The Curse of Frankenstein, where the monster removes his mask, and Christine Gengaro proposes that this suggests that Humbert is a monster in a mask, which I think works quite well. I mean,
also,
Kubrick,
crazy
as we know
that it's Christopher Lee.
Yeah, in Attack of the Clones, of course. Yeah, and of course Kubrick, as we know, he puts everything that he puts in his movies, he puts in for a reason.
Yes.
So, of course.
And
yeah,
that reason is so that people can endlessly speculate about it.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, but I think that's a pretty clear link there.
No,
So,
I can agree with that.
Yeah, that's correct. So, of course, Lolita kisses Humbert goodnight as he plays chess with her mother. His line in the scene is, "I take your queen." So, again, I think that's very, very obvious there. And chess is a recurring motif in Nabokov's novels. Of course, he's Russian.
Of course, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was going to say he's Russian.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also was a favourite pastime of director Stanley Kubrick. So I bet they both love that. They both love that scene. So we can then get into this high school dance. I think that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit weird because there are like adults dancing too. So
maybe it's not a high school dance. Maybe like it's a community dance.
Community dance. Yes.
Because I don't think she's in high school yet, based on the age. The age isn't given, which we'll get into later. But yeah, I think, of course, it's summer, so she could be. She definitely goes to high school. Yeah, she definitely goes to high school in the fall, as they say. But yeah, anyway, so they're at this dance, and we see Humbert display how annoying Americans are to him. Every American, apart from Lolita, obviously, that Humbert interacts with, he just wants to shoot them.
Yes.
That's how it seems. And for British people, this is not an uncommon experience. I mean, what is the worst thing, being a paedophile or being annoying?
That is true. Yeah, that's a question that many British people have to ask themselves.
Yeah, and they express their weird sexuality, Americans, by being swingers, I guess. That's what they do in this movie.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. I do find it kind of funny because obviously, like, it's like weird because on the one hand, like, America, in many ways, is kind of like more conservative. Like, they're conservative around, like, swearing and stuff, like, they really don't like to swear in America. But then, like, in other ways, they are very kind of much less reserved than British people. So yeah, it's kind of like, it's swings and roundabouts. Just like where Humbert likes to hang out.
That's good. That's good. So yeah, obviously the British, they're not very talkative, but of course the stereotype, they're from the upper class, they're quite discreet, but obviously they are paedophiles.
Yes.
And I was thinking from Nabokov, why did he make the paedophile British? And I think it's because that he has to have some inkling into what British upper classes got on.
Well, wasn't there a I swear I'm right in saying there was like a scandal in the late 50s or early 60s that
was after he wrote the novel.
Oh, was it after? Okay, yeah, you know what I'm talking about, where like the guy banged. Yeah,
probably. I mean, there's always scandals,
Yeah, there was like I think there was like a famous scandal, but and based on the fact you probably knew what I was talking about, it's probably that one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a bunch of scandals, and of course, that is something that is mocked by particularly Americans online about British society, I guess, the paedophilia. But the thing is, they have Epstein, and that absolutely trumps every single thing that Britain. We've never had a paedophile island over here. Like we've never we've never had a billionaire.
That is true.
Paedophile.
By the way, I found out, just for the record, what I was thinking was the Profumo affair.
Okay.
So there we go.
Okay.
Just so everyone knows, it was the Profumo affair, which actually happened in 1961, which means I guess it was before the novel, after the novel, but before the film, I'd assume.
Yeah, quite timely then, I guess. But of course, and he is a French literature professor, and of course we know how the French are.
Oh, yes, they really are, though, aren't they? Those French.
Yeah, like that's the thing. More than the British, I'd say, in terms of it being acceptable in culture. British, it's maybe done just as much, but just behind closed doors. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. And maybe we could get an expert on to discuss, but we haven't got that today. But yeah, I'm just saying, like, oh, the British guy, he's a paedophile. Haha, of course. Well, Claire Quilty is American. He's a paedophile. And, of course, Epstein, like I said, just blows anything the British have done out of the water. So just remember that, Michael. Remember that. So, of course, it's clear that Lolita's mother is very frustrated with being single. Charlotte, the mother, resents her daughter for having, I guess, her whole life ahead of her.
Yeah.
For being young and pretty, she what does she call her derisively? A young starlet?
Yes.
That's what she says, yes. She thinks her daughter is kind of mocking her by spying on her, I think. I think that's what she feels anyway. But yeah, there's a really interesting dynamic that is very well done by Kubrick. I put Kubica instead of Kubrick. That was a bad mistake. The Polish F1 driver, and who of course won his only F1 race, which was the 2008 Canadian Grand Prix, which was the Grand Prix that took place today. But anyway,
fascinating.
Yeah, fascinating how it all works. Together.
It's all connected.
It's all connected. But yeah, so the actors particularly, Shelley Winters in these scenes, as Charlotte Hayes Humbert, or she's just Charlotte Hayes at this stage. She's very good, wouldn't you say?
No, yeah, I agree. She does a good job at playing like this kind of desperate, horny housewife. And like I will say, I feel like it's very hard to relate to Humbert because he turns down a lot of what they call in the business grateful pussy. Like lots of like women who would be like who like clearly really want a guy, like would just be like.
I thought you were gonna say MILF.
I was thinking about saying MILF, but the thing is, like, it's not obvious. The thing is, it's not really that they're MILFs. I mean, it's hard to say because they're black and white, which just makes it a bit harder.
I thought they were all white.
Ha 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 ha. Okay. But yeah. I guess you could say MILF, but either way, the point is that more than that, like, you get the impression that like they'd be, I mean, what guy wouldn't
so,
want
Michael,
to just be totally
I asked
adored?
you. I asked you about
how good of an actress is.
Shelley Winters' performance, and then you've strayed into talking about how much of an idiot Humbert is for not having sex.
Not banging MILFs.
Yeah, exactly.
Not
so that's
banging
great.
grateful women. No. But the thing is, yeah, I agree. She like plays this. Well, yeah, I mean, she plays.
I think it's
the
very
whole
good.
character well, and yeah, like that kind of weird. I like how she kind of like balances between like trying to keep it cool in order to like be attractive to Humbert, but then also like being very angry and insecure. I find that kind of funny. Or, funny, well done as well.
Yeah. So after Lolita departs for camp, the maid gives Humbert a letter from Charlotte. I love the scene where she tells him Lolita's going to camp. It is like a black comedy scene.
Yeah.
It's great. Well, it is a black comedy scene, but yeah, again, the maid gives Humbert a letter from Charlotte confessing her love for him and demanding he vacates at once unless he feels the same way. The letter says if Humbert is still in the house when she returns, he must marry her. Though he roars with laughter while reading the sadly heartfelt yet characteristically overblown letter, Humbert marries Charlotte. So it's a great scene when he laughs.
Yeah.
But it shows just how infatuated, of course, Humbert is for Lolita. It's crazy the lengths he will go for her, basically like ruin his life.
Yes. He is. Well, that's the thing. See, I was kind of thinking in some ways you could say this film is like the simp Humbert versus the Chad Quilty. Like Humbert just makes himself into such a simp in this film, like just giving everything up for Lolita. And I thought, like, here's the thing, like, if this was made nowadays, it would be about a guy who goes into financial ruin by like subscribing to Lolita's OnlyFans.
Okay. But again, she wouldn't be allowed on OnlyFans, Mike. She's too young.
That's true. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, basically, I have a problem with this scene, really, because the thing is, there is no inner monologue, of course, throughout the movie, so I think it seems crazy that I was surprised. It was like, oh, right, okay, he marries Charlotte.
Yeah.
So it didn't seem like he was that infatuated with Lolita, and of course, with an inner monologue in a novel, which is what you get, you can then understand that more. It seems crazy that he's overwhelmed by Lolita, but the thing is, it's not crazy in the novel because, of course, it's written from Humbert's perspective. You get that in a monologue. In the novel, it goes into his lifelong complexes around young girls, and they're basically concealed in the film. In short, the novel flags Humbert as both mentally unsound and obsessively infatuated with young girls in a way the film never does. Jenkins notes that Humbert even seems a bit more dignified and restrained than the other residents of Ramsdale, particularly Lolita's aggressive mother, in a way that invites the audience to sympathise with Humbert.
Yeah.
Humbert is portrayed as someone urbane and sophisticated, trapped in a provincial small town populated by slightly lecherous people, a refugee from the old world in Europe in an especially crass part of the new world. So therefore, I think it does seem weirder in the film that he chose to marry Charlotte because he seems more reasonable and not that much of a pedo, basically.
Yes.
So I can't really, when he does that and marries her, I can't really imagine him doing that for Lolita, which is, of course, completely different to how it's portrayed in the novel. So what do you think?
So in the novel, he's got like a whole, what's the word I'm looking for? A complex.
I'll get into that in a bit as well. Yeah, it goes even more into that.
I agree. And again, it could be an aspect of it just being underdeveloped due to, you could say the constraints of, the fact that it's a film and also, I guess, the amount of time. But yeah, the thing is, I guess, like the maybe... See, I was going to say, like, you could almost point out that it does make it kind of more apparent that, like, well, because obviously you could say, like, the idea of, like, well, he seems normal, so therefore he wouldn't do it. is often like a kind of not correct attitude to have about this kind of stuff, because obviously somebody who seems normal.
Oh, I'm sorry
for
for not having the correct
no,
attitude.
yeah. Well, the thing is, I'm not trying to razz you. I'm just saying like that. Basically, based on that could be like the excuse of saying, well, that's why. That's something you get out of the fact that it's kind of, it doesn't seem like you do it. It kind of just communicates, oh wait, so a guy who like seemed normal is actually just like crazy. And yeah, I guess in that sense you could argue you get something from not knowing that he, or like why he's crazy, or the specific reality of how crazy he is, and just picking up the fact of like, oh, okay, I guess he must just be sort of messed up.
Yeah, I mean, I just like a reason, like it's just something that which would lead me to believe that he would, because he's laughing. I was like, oh, he's not gonna do this. He doesn't care that much about Lolita. Maybe he'll move to another residence and see her secretly. That's what I thought was gonna happen. Obviously,
not marry some woman.
But again, the film entirely omits the critical episode in Humbert's life in which, at age 14, he was uninterrupted making love to young Annabelle Lee, who shortly thereafter died, and consequently omits all indications that Humbert had a preoccupation with prepubescent girls prior to meeting Dolores Hayes, or Lolita.
Wow.
In the novel, Humbert gives his youthful relationship with Annabelle Lee, thwarted by both adult intervention and her death, as the key to his obsession with nymphets, as he calls it.
Nymphets.
Yes, nymphets. The film's only mention of nymphets is an entry in Humbert's diary specifically revolved around Lolita. Yes, Humbert explains that the smell and taste of youth filled his desires throughout throughout adulthood.
Yeah, I'd imagine he would have had stuff to do with youth when he was a child.
Yeah, of course. That little girl with her seaside limbs and ardent tongue haunted him ever since. He thus claims that Lolita began with Annabelle, and that Annabelle's spell was broken by incarnating her in another.
Okay. See that? Yeah, that is interesting.
Sorry, incarnating. Sorry.
Incarnating. Yeah.
Yeah, I said incarnating. Yeah, incarnating her in another. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I was trying to think what that means. Like in the flesh. We all know because like carne, like carnivore. Okay.
But what's interesting? Oh, sorry. Go on.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say like the one thing I find kind of interesting is like one of my like thoughts having watched it was I was thinking like, okay, so he's like one of those guys, because I always find it a bit cringy, and I'm just gonna say there is somebody we know who had this little attribute at university, which is like adult men who get crushes on people. I mean, adults in general get crushes on people. I always find it a bit weird because like people who like just have.
What do you mean?
So like basically, I would say like the normal thing is you kind of just you go through life, you socialize with people, and it's just like, oh, if you get along with somebody, then things progress from there. But there seems to be some people who like they have somebody they know, or a woman they know, and they just become like in love with that woman. And even if, for example, that woman already has a girlfriend or something, a boyfriend or something like that, they'll still be obsessed with them, even if everybody in their house makes fun of them for being obsessed with this person who has.
What are you talking about?
But yeah, the point is like that aspect of like being like somebody who I would think should be emotionally mature and yet still being obsessed over like one particular individual to the exclusion of like so many other concerns, including like moving on and just getting with someone who does actually want you, is like something I always find funny that people have that attribute. And I that's what I thought this guy had. I thought this guy was just like one of those people who's just like, he's just got a crush on Lolita.
That's what I thought, and that's how it's portrayed in the film.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like, so yeah, obviously what you're revealing there is that no, it's just like he's just. But I think the weird thing about that is it kind of creates a question of, like you could say it creates a question of like why, therefore, in the novel, I guess, is he particularly interested in Lolita? Because by that logic,
okay, we'll get into this. We'll get into this. Right. So the idea that anything connected with young girls motivates Humbert to accept the job as professor of French literature at Beardsley College and move to Ramsdale at all is entirely omitted from the film, but in the novel he first finds accommodation with the McHugh family because the McHughs have a 12-year-old daughter, a potential, quote... What did you expect?
I don't know. I just like... I don't know. It's just not. I'm gonna say, and I don't want to sound again like I know you've already said this, and I know we're supposed to be a fair and balanced podcast, but I want to say that I also think that being a pedo is not good.
A potential, quote, enigmatic nymphet whom he would coach in French, unquote. However, the McHugh house happens to burn down in the few days prior to his arrival, and this is when Mrs. Hayes offers to accommodate Humbert. So the thing is, he is much less, of course, creepy in the movie, so much less of a predator. He just seemingly stumbles across this girl who infatuates him in the movie, rather than actively going out looking for her. It's based on the novel. It seems like he staying with 12-year-old girl. That would be something he's looking out for. That's something that is on his like checklist.
Yeah.
An asset. This has got a nice room, nice size bed, 12-year-old girl. This is looking good. But
his estate agent job didn't work out very well.
Yeah, but obviously in this movie, that's not the case. Again, maybe it would clash with the comedy that the movie tries to do. Maybe it would be too dark if you made Humbert like that much of a predator. A full-on paedophile whose motivation is clearly just having sex with young girls. That's what.
Yeah, in this he almost seems like kind of like pathetic and like almost kind of impotent.
Yes, and of course, throughout the movie he develops, but crucially when he meets Lolita and starts to become infatuated with her, it doesn't seem like, this was his plan all along,
Yeah.
Also, I will say, this is another thing which we'll get into later, basically Lolita appears a lot older in the novelist counterpart. Jenkins said, a story originally told from the edge of the moral abyss is fast moving towards safer ground. I wouldn't really say it's close to safer ground still.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still, again, I mentioned...
the Hollywood compromise again.
Yeah, the Hollywood compromise.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so that makes sense, because in this, she's like, what, 14, 15?
Yeah, 14.
And I guess she was probably like 12 in...
Yes. The McHugh house happens to have a 12-year-old daughter. So yeah, that's probably the same age I think Lolita was, which we'll get into that later, in fact. But yeah, I just thought I'd mention it. But of course, things then turn sour for the couple after they get married in the absence of the child. Glum Humbert becomes more withdrawn. Charlotte feels unfulfilled and upset. And then, of course, she discovers his diary entries detailing his passion for Lolita and describing Charlotte as obnoxious and brainless. In an outburst, she runs outside but is hit by a car and dies. So I would have liked to have seen that happen. I think that would be a funny scene.
That is true. Yeah. Like they could have, like that could have worked with a black comedy.
Yeah. You got the comedy in this movie. With the police. Again, we have the fucking police convention line later when Humbert's like, "Oh, so what's this convention for?" And the guy at the desk goes, "Oh, it's a police convention." And there's just a wonderful line there.
Yeah,
which I
it's
enjoyed.
like the episode of Desperate Housewives where Gabby's mother-in-law catches her sleeping with the gardener, and then she runs outside and immediately gets run over, which is already pretty hilarious. But then they have another scene where she wakes up in the middle of the night in the hospital and goes to run and slips on a wet floor and then falls down the stairs. What a funny show.
Yeah, okay, but of course, there's more differences to the novel again. So it just basically the novel makes Humbert a lot worse, basically, than the film, as we've already detailed. But it goes into in more here. So Humbert mocks his declaration of love towards him and takes a pleasant bath after her accidental death, which of course kind of happens in the movie. But this act from Humbert replaces the voiceovers in the novel in which he discusses his plans to seduce and molest Lolita. So taking a bath after Charlotte's death is another way of establishing Humbert as a manipulative, scheming, and selfish person. And of course, he does take a bath in the film, but you don't get that from that again because of the lack of inner monologue. And again, what we mentioned before, his plans to molest Lolita, he doesn't really write or say any of those plans in the film either. However, Humbert's response to Charlotte's love notes in the film is still much kinder than in the novel, and the film also tries to make Charlotte unlikable, which I think is true. I mean, she does seem a bit unlikable. The novel doesn't really try to do that. So again, Kubrick is making it more like a dark comedy than just distressing. Because if Humbert was talking about molesting Lolita and was a bit, more manipulative, more scheming and selfish, then it would be more distressing, of course, more dark, and it wouldn't fit in with the comedic tone that Kubrick went for. Obviously, they went down different paths, as you can see with Humbert's character, can't you, Michael?
Yeah, that is true. And yeah, the thing is, in the film, it's just it just comes across as a really kind of miserable marriage where he doesn't like her at all. But it's almost again. It's she annoys him, and he definitely comes across as way more of a dickhead, but it's kind of it's also there's kind of a comedic aspect of oh, look at him getting annoyed, isn't it?
He has to put up with her. That's what he has to do, and it's that's part of the comedy and the tension.
Yeah, it's kind of it almost feels like a kind of comedic kind of divine justice thing within the context of the film. It's he's trying to get with Lolita, and look, he's going for all of this, this relationship he doesn't want to be in. Ha ha ha. Also, kind of funny
with
that...
which crucially in the film with a woman who is very annoying.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so that's
definitely.
what adds the comedic edge. While in the novel, it appears she isn't that annoying.
Yes. Also, she's like, the reason why he wants to kill her with the gun, which he like has a whole thought about, is the idea of and he can't do that, which I guess is no. And I assume obviously I don't know if you know this. Does that happen in the novel where he like thinks about doing the gun, then realizes he can't?
He thinks about drowning her in a lake.
Okay, that's okay.
A bit different.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, like that's like directly motivated by her wanting to keep Lolita in the like away from them forever. Which the thing about that, and again, I don't know if that's in the novel, but like it makes her look kind of crazy and jealous, which again makes her look less sympathetic. So it's kind of like, again, obviously he still looks bad, but it kind of fits in with the kind of narrative of him being, I guess, like comparatively softened compared to being like pure evil, because it's like,
Yes.
well, she's not nice either, because she's like jealous of her daughter and is planning on sending her away and not letting her be in the house.
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely the novel portrays Humbert in a worse light than the film. So and again, you could argue, is that better or worse? I would say that it is. It's just a different path that Kubrick took. Yeah. Make it more of a comedy. But anyway, so Humbert arrives to pick up Lolita from camp. They stay the night at a hotel that is handling an overflow influx of police officers attending a convention. I didn't know there were police conventions, but apparently there are. Claire Quilty happens to be there. And again, it's such a thing in a novel to happen. This mysterious character once again appears.
Yeah, people just randomly crossing paths.
Yeah, and this is what I have a problem with. I think it happens in the novel in a similar way, from what I can tell. He's there. Okay, it's a massive coincidence, but he's also spying on Humbert. Now, I don't know why he'd do that unless he thinks Humbert is infatuated with Lolita. Of course, he has a conversation with Humbert when he goes out on the porch at night, and another fantastic performance from Peter Sellers. Where he says he's a police officer, and he tries to get Humbert to take another room because he wants to intimidate Humbert basically into not sharing a bed with Lolita. That's what he wants to do. But I don't know why he thinks that this man has kidnapped Lolita. Like, yes, of course he knew her mother, and of course he knew Lolita, but that was about a year ago, or at least a year ago, from what I can tell. And her mother might have remarried, and indeed she did to Humbert. And it's just that, of course, Humbert is he is kind of kidnapping her, I guess. But it's he could literally, if her mother hadn't been able to take her back from camp, he would just be doing the exact same thing as he's doing in this movie, probably. I don't know how far camp is. I don't know how far it is away from the house or whatever. But yeah, again, I think it's a big leap to think this guy has run away with Lolita. I don't know. That's what I think, Michael. What, do you agree with me?
I would agree. Like the whole kind of attitude of like Peter Sellers in the film, it's almost like, it almost seems like he comes across like an agent of chaos, where he's just like messing with this guy, and it's kind of like weird to try and work out his actions coming from a place of rational concern. And I would agree with you that this is
he's not rationally concerned.
Well, I guess maybe not concerned, rationally possessive, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, he's not rational. I mean, he's also a paedophile. He wants Lolita.
Yeah. Maybe not rational, like logical. Like he's got like a plan, because it's like the way it almost seems at first when you just see this like weird eccentric guy is you're like, oh, is he just like messing with Humphrey?
Well, like I said, I think he's Humbert. He's trying to intimidate. He's trying to intimidate him, being like, "Oh yeah, I'm a police officer.
Yeah.
I'm suspicious of what you're doing. So I know your game, pal. So don't think about it." And Humbert just kind of like brushes him off. But yeah, I don't know why he would. Basically, I don't know, why he would be that suspicious in the first place, really. He could be a bit suspicious, but that suspicious, like that you're basically spying on him. That's another level, I think. But I do like how he keeps saying he's a normal guy and Humbert's a normal guy.
Yeah,
that's funny. Yeah. So anyway, let's get into the non-stuff, Michael. We're finally there. So the next morning, Humbert and Lolita play a game she learned at camp, and it is implied they have a sexual encounter.
Yes.
So this scene where Lolita first seduces Humbert as he lies on the cot is, I found this interesting, 10 seconds longer in the British and Australian cut of the film. In the US edition, the shot fades as she whispers the details of the game. She played with Charlie at camp, but in the UK Australian print, the shot continues as Humbert mumbles that he's not familiar with the game. And then she bends down again to whisper more details. Kubrick then cuts to a closer shot of Lolita's face as she says, "Well, alrighty then," and then fades as she begins to descend onto Humbert on the cot. The thing is with that scene, I was wondering because I think I read that before I watched the scene, and I was like, okay, is that it? Is that really what they cut from the movie? Just
Yeah.
that didn't seem that much worse than It's not like she kisses him or anything. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know why that
No,
had to
yeah,
be
yeah,
cut.
that's not much. Yeah, because I was thinking to myself, like, when you said there was a cut, I was like, oh, did I see like, which version did I see? Because the version I saw wasn't very, explicit or anything like
R-rated.
that. But yeah,
Yeah.
like, I saw the version where he says, well, I'm not familiar with the rules of that game, that particular game.
But of course, there is another thing to talk about with the scene, which is the censorship compared to the book, Michael. Because obviously, we watched the uncensored version, but there was more stuff that Kubrick wanted to put in the movie that he didn't get a chance to in any version. So let's get onto the censorship of the erotic moments. So at the
Yes.
time the film was released, the rating system was not in effect, and the Hays Code, dating back to the 1930s, governed movie production. The censorship of the time inhibited Kubrick's direction. Kubrick later commented that because of all the pressure over the production code and the Catholic Legion of Decency, which is hilarious, Catholics don't like you having sex with little kids.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
I didn't believe I sufficiently dramatized the erotic aspect of Humbert's relationship with Lolita. If I could do the film over again, I would have stressed the erotic components of their relationship with the same weight Nabokov did. So clearly he didn't get the chance to. Clearly there's more stuff in Nabokov's book, that Kubrick didn't have the opportunity to put in the movie. Kubrick hinted at the nature of the relationship indirectly through double entendre and visual cues, such as Humbert's painting Lolita's toes. In a 1972 Newsweek interview, after the rating system had been introduced in '68, Kubrick said he probably wouldn't have made the film had he realised in advance how difficult the censorship problem would be. The film is deliberately vague over Lolita's age as well. Kubrick commented, I think that some people had the mental picture of a 9-year-old, but Lolita was 12 and a half in the book. Sue Lyon was 13. Actually, Lyon was 14 by the time filming started, so maybe they cast her when she was 13, I'm not sure. And 15 when it was finished. So again, quite a bit older than in the book, Again, she looks like she's 14 or 15, or even older, especially at the end when she's like meant to be, married.
Yeah.
The sexual relationship between Lolita and Humbert is implied and never depicted graphically on the screen. So yeah, that is of course the case, and I mean it seems weird to be like, oh, that's disappointing. We need more explicit erotic nonsense. But yeah, it's certainly Kubrick was disappointed in that. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, it's a weird thing because, like, obviously, I mean, on the one hand, like, if they wanted to be as explicit, wouldn't they have had, considering she was 14, they would have had to film a 14-year-old being explicitly intimate with an adult man, which, so, like, the question would be, even if they wanted to, for the sake of the narrative, make things more explicit, obviously, in order to not be just literally, in order to not be overtly immoral with the production, they'd have had to have kept things at least a little bit implied, because they can't.
Obviously, but like even like do they?
They don't really. Yeah, then you could watch this film, and they're not very overt about the fact that they've done like stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, if you watch this film and you were deaf, could you make out what was happening? Probably not.
No.
Really? Yeah. Again, if you had no knowledge of the movie. But yeah, so I think that could be an issue. And I mean, Variety on Wikipedia, they assessed the movie like this, calling the film occasionally amusing but shapeless and likening it to a bee from which the stinger has been removed. It still buzzes with a sort of promising irreverence, but it lacks the power to shock and eventually makes very little point either as comedy or satire. So basically, the review say it just doesn't go far enough, and you can go too far, like with Cuties, and that's what I criticised Cuties for. It was like, oh, you want to show how child sexualization is wrong, and you produce a movie which sexualizes children in more just the most out of any movie I've ever seen, certainly. Yes, and again, that is something that it's really like you kind of shot yourself in the foot there, and of course Kubrick's not necessarily talking about the sexualization of children and why it's bad, although of course he agrees with that. He's just this movie is about the relationship between these two characters, so you could still show that and it wouldn't make the film worse. But yeah, again, you don't want to go too far with it, and I
Yeah.
would suggest, you should have done what the fucking what's it called, To Catch a Predator does, where they have like 18-year-old actresses,
Yeah.
who are who wait for the paedophiles to come and get them, who are like playing 13-year-old girls, and the paedophile falls for it. So they must,
Yes, there must be someone. Yeah, I think you could easily have an 18-year-old who looked like a younger.
14 or 15. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
To Catch a Predator does it. If it's good enough to, if it's literally good enough for real life.
Yeah.
I
I also think though this film would be funnier if you did have like an obvious, like somebody who was obviously like in their 20s pretending to be a teenage girl. It would be like
Laura Palmer in Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. See, I was thinking about like a porno set in a high school where I don't know, like which I'm not, but like you could imagine like a porn star who's like obviously in their 20s being like, "Sorry, sir, I didn't do the assignment on time."
Oh yeah, she's like 32 years old.
Is there anything I can do to get a better grade?
Yeah, great. But yeah, so again, I mean, it's I get the movie probably would have been better and packed more of a punch if they hadn't censored those erotic moments. And clearly, Kubrick thought that as well, so he was disappointed that he was held back by the censors.
Yeah, because I guess like the point seemed to make is like, oh well, like as a kind of exploration of the main topic.
Yeah,
there's only so much you can explore that while literally not really
avoiding
showing any
it.
of it. Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Just
I would kind of
it.
agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, so and again, if you showed it, it wouldn't like contradict like the message of the movie really at all, because it's not the same in Cuties or with Cuties in that regard. So anyway, in the fall, Humbert reports to his position at Beardsley College and enrolls Lolita in high school. Before long, people begin to wonder about the relationship between the father and his overprotected daughter. Humbert worries about her involvement with the school play and with male classmates. Again, there is a bunch of, I guess, insinuation about what is going on between them, but the impression I get from this part of the movie is it's just, man, it must be hard being a paedophile. Like,
it reminds me of like the Louis C.K. joke. Like it must be really hard, but they still do it. From which you can only surmise it must be really good.
Yeah, but less about it being really good, just about the fact that, I guess that's part of it. Maybe that's why he does it. But just how, Louis C.K. was talking about how you get locked up for years and like you're the worst person in the prison, but people still do it.
Yeah, you're talking about like how hard it is not to get caught. Yeah,
well, how hard it is not to get caught, and hiding her away from the world. So you keep her and nobody finds out about you and her, but also keeping this girl happy. Like he says he's doing all the cooking, all the cleaning, buying her whatever she wants.
Yeah, again, he is a simp.
Yeah, and he's like, oh my god, I'm doing all of this for this girl, man. Is it even worth it anymore? And but he still thinks yes, because that's what true love is, Michael. That's
beautiful.
That is beautiful. But yeah, that's what I got from this part of the movie. Just like, damn, man, he's got a lot on his plate, but fair play for still going at it. That's a man who's committed. But anyway, so one night Humbert meets Dr. Zenf, who claims to be from Lolita's school and wants to discuss her knowledge of the facts of life. He convinces Humbert to let Lolita participate in the school play. So of course, this is Claire Quilty. What a gay name, by the way.
Yeah, that's a gay name.
And it's an interesting twist. Of course, Quilty's role is greatly magnified in the film and brought into the foreground of the narrative, because in the novel, the person who has this conversation with Humbert is Miss Pratt, the school principal. And of course, she discusses with Humbert Lolita's behavioural issues and persuades Humbert to allow her to participate in the play. In the film, this role is replaced by Quilty, disguised as a school psychologist named Dr. Zenf. This disguise does not appear in the novel at all, so this is completely new. In both versions, a claim is made that Lolita appears to be sexually repressed, as she mysteriously has no interest in boys. Maybe she's a lesbian. Did they ever come to that conclusion?
That was a what's the word for it? A pathology back in those days.
Yes.
She caught the lesbian.
Of course, Claire Quilty knows that she's not a lesbian. He knows what's going on. But hey, maybe that's the case with Miss Pratt. Maybe she should maybe think that, but of course she doesn't in the novel. But both Dr. Zant and Miss Pratt expressed the opinion that this aspect of her youth should be developed and stimulated by dating and participating in the school's social activities. Pratt mostly wants Humbert to let Dolores generally into the dramatic group and the play, while Quilty is specifically focused on the high school play, which is of course written by Quilty, which Lolita has secretly rehearsed for. In the novel, Miss Pratt naively believes this talk about Lolita's sexual repression, while Quilty, in his disguise, knows the truth. So the question is, which is better? Because it depends on what you want. Because I think Quilty is more interesting. Like, oh, he's disguising himself as this school psychologist, and he's tricking Humbert, and he really knows what's going on. And he's trying to, manipulate him and get, Lolita, basically into his clutches. While Miss Pratt, it is, I guess, more realistic. Like, of course, because you don't have someone fucking dressing up as a German psychologist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Miss Pratt is more realistic. And if that was in the movie with Miss Pratt, it'd be, like, darker as well, probably. Because it'd be like, oh, yeah, this is, this is actually... You can imagine this happening in real life. I can't imagine a Dr. Zempf situation in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like Humbert's trying to, hide things from this woman who's genuinely concerned about this girl. So again, it's another example of like basically in the movie things are more I guess comedic or more
exactly
interesting and just less realistic and dark than in the novel, wouldn't you say?
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that it's clear that they're going down that black comedy route by having Peter Sellers, who's like a funny guy, play this goofy character and kind of like, not really twist the knife, but I don't know, like just mess around with Humphrey. Humbert. I just find that such a weird name. Do you know of anyone else called Humbert?
I don't think so.
Yeah, because that's why I keep wanting to say Humphrey, because I'm like, that is a name. Anyway, yeah, mess around with him, and like that's kind of funny. Whereas, yeah, like coming from a genuine place of concern. Of course, it is a funny situation or a weird situation because, of course, actually having genuine concern is the appropriate response. But yeah, I guess it just would make for a very different film.
If you're talking about something which would be more realistic,
yes, exactly,
and more, harrowing, that this paedophile is basically concealing something to this woman who is concerned, but this paedophile is concealing something to this guy who's doing a stupid German accent, who also wants this girl. So yeah, it's less again, you've got more of a comedic twist to it, and yeah, it's less harrowing. But yeah, so obviously Lolita gets frustrated because Humbert basically Citizen Kane's her, Michael. He keeps her locked up in his house away from anybody her own age. Well, that's what he tries to do. But,
and tries to force her to get lessons to be an opera singer.
Yeah, or piano lessons, I guess.
I was thinking about Citizen Kane, but yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, yeah, okay, I got you, yeah. And you're making got you.
Yeah, the comparison, yeah. But anyway, generally the film gives little information about Lolita's feelings, and the film is not especially focused on Lolita's feelings because in the medium of film, her character is inevitably fleshed out somewhat from the cipher that she remains in the novel. Nonetheless, Kubrick actually omits the few vignettes in the novel in which Humbert's bubble is burst and one catches a glimpse of Lolita's personal misery. Susan Bordeaux writes, Kubrick chose not to include any of the vignettes from the novel which bring Lolita's misery to the forefront, nudging Humbert's obsession temporarily off centre stage. Nabokov's wife, Vera, insisted, rightly, on the pathos of Lolita's utter loneliness. But in Kubrick's film, Humbert, after Lolita's mother's death, tries to calm her down by promising her a brand new hi-fi. The same scene in the novel ends with Lolita sobbing despite Humbert having piled her with gifts all day, or pilled her or whatever, with gifts all day. So that is a key difference. So of course in the film it's like, Humbert's like, oh, don't worry, I'll get you anything you want, but in the novel he does, and she's still really sad. And again, that's so much more depressing. And again, the novel is so much more depressing. And Nabokov's wife insisted that they focus much more on Lolita's loneliness. And Kubrick doesn't really include any of this. Like, he really doesn't give a lot of information about her feelings in the movie.
Yeah, and I mean a lot of it, because like there are moments where you can see like that she is lonely, but it comes across as her kind of being frustrated and angry more so than like sad. And you don't really get the impression that she's like traumatized or like screwed up by the whole thing to the extent that she would be.
Yeah, again, that's would be very much depressing. That would be, and again, this is meant to be a comedy, so that would be really dark and not really fitting into the tone that Kubrick's trying to go for. So I understand why he left, Lolita's feelings out of this. But anyway,
Yeah.
Bordeaux goes on to say, emphasizing Lolita's sadness and loss would not have jibed, of course, with the film's dedication to inflicting the dark with the comedy.
Yeah.
It would have altered the overwhelming, ironic, anti-sentimental character of the movie. And yeah, of course, we agree. It would have altered the anti-sentimental character of the movie. The film is not... It's not sentimental at all, really. And so, yeah, that would be very weird to see. But anyway, the novel briefly gives us evidence of Lolita's sadness and misery. Humbert glosses over it, but the film omits nearly all of it. And yeah, Kubrick made a dark comedy, not that much a harrowing tale. It's partly harrowing, some parts are, but, nowhere near the level of the novel, of course. And again, we talk about, he decides to go down a different path. And I think, it's weird because, again, that would have been some really... powerful scenes to see, I guess. Actually in the film. So this is one of the areas where I'm like, yeah, I would have liked to see that in the film. Of course, it would completely go against everything, the whole tone of the movie. So
yeah.
No, it's tough. It's tough to say which is better. But anyway, so of course, Humbert is desperate to keep Lolita, and so I think it's time to talk about the allure of Lolita, Michael. And I guess the fact that, because here's the thing. It's not just about her age, is it?
No.
This is crucial. It's not just that she's 14, because she is something that is so pure, so young and innocent, and for Humbert, she has not been spoiled. And
yes.
that is what is attractive to Humbert a lot. That's what it seems in this movie. And the word nymphette, again, you like that word, don't you, Michael?
Nymphette, I do think it's a funny word.
Yes, it does really describe his feelings very well in terms of what he thinks of Lolita. So, of course, in the novel, Mona is active in the school play, and Lolita tells Humbert stories about Mona's love life, and Humbert notes Mona has long ceased to be, if ever she was, a nymphette. Basically, she's a slag, Michael.
Yes.
Yes,
Well,
and that is something that is very key. Like, Lolita has to remain pure and just for him, and she's not like a grown-up woman who's like has a active, love life or whatever. No. She must be innocent, and that is absolutely crucial to him. And no filthy boys, as he says.
Yeah. I feel like there's a word. I feel like it's called like the Madonna whore complex, and it's basically like a thing of like, and I think like at its core, it's like a thing that like feminists talk about with like the entirety of the attitude towards women.
You've told me this before, by the way.
That probably makes sense. Yeah, like so like they're super sexualized, but then also expected to be like super pure. And I feel like that's literally what you see here. And like he literally has a line like super early on where he's like something like, she's very pure, but she's also very suggestive, or I don't know, I can't remember his exact line, but he like literally almost makes that exact observation in his diary at some point, probably while calling her an nymphette.
Yeah, she's the ultimate like fantasy for him, basically. That's why like she's so attractive to him, but also she's so innocent as well. Like and again, this goes to why he was so infatuated with her at the start, because that's what he saw.
Also, I feel like it could speak to his insecurity, because I feel like there could be an aspect of like, he knows, like I think deep down he probably knows that he's only able to have this relationship with her because he's in a position of power over her.
Oh yeah, of course.
And that's why he like feels the need to like grab onto it and maintain that power.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, this is the only way he could ever, be with somebody who, for him would be as attractive as she is.
Yes.
And obviously, should we want to do an impression of him saying "No filthy boys"?
No filthy boys.
No filthy boys, Lolita.
No filthy boys. I won't have you with any of those filthy boys anymore.
Yes. Again, it's like, because if she is with those filthy boys, then of course that she then might move away from him, and she might also lose her innocence. He wants to keep her locked up, basically. And of course that is a very key aspect. It is not just about the age, because he with Mona, she long ceased to be a nymphette.
Yes.
I wonder if he has like nymphette rankings in his diary.
the tier list.
Yeah, tier list of nymphets.
Yeah.
Like what's it?
I was thinking like the Indian Facebook meme where it's like friendship with bloody blah ended. Now like Mustafa is my new best friend. It's like nymphette with Annabelle ended. Now Lolita is my new nymphette.
My new nymphette. Great name. Obviously, so Humbert decides to leave at Beardsley College and take Lolita on the road again. Lolita objects at first, but then suddenly changes her mind and seems very enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Nonce on the road, or sorry, rather, once on the road. See, the thing is, I accidentally wrote nonce on the road in my notes.
That's what they call a Freudian slip.
I know, right. But Humbert realizes they're being followed by a mysterious car. When Lolita becomes sick, he takes her to the hospital. However, when he returns to pick her up, she's gone. The nurse tells him she left with a man claiming to be her uncle, and Humbert is left without a single clue as to her disappearance. So, of course, this is Quilty, and of course, we have seen him throughout the movie, so it makes more sense, I guess, that he would be the one to, of course, kidnap, or not kidnap Lolita because she goes willingly,
Yeah.
apparently. And yeah, of course, he has an expanded role in the film, and
Yes.
not in the novel, because of course, he doesn't take the place of Mrs. Pratt in the novel. So therefore, it'd be a bit more of a surprise, really, in the novel, because this guy's kind of been in the background. So, and I'll explain a bit more on this. So, in the novel, Humbert catches only brief, uncomprehending glimpses of his nemesis before their final confrontation at Quilty's home. The reader finds out about Quilty late in the narrative, along with Humbert. Quilty's role in the story is made fully explicit from the beginning of the film, rather than being a concealed surprise twist near the end of the tale. In a 1962 interview, Kubrick describes his decision to expand Quilty's role, saying, "Just beneath the surface of the story was this strong secondary narrative thread possible, because after Humbert seduces her in the motel, or rather after she seduces him, the big question has been answered. So it was good to have this narrative of mystery continuing after the seduction. This magnifies the book's theme of Quilty as a dark double of Humbert, mirroring all of Humbert's worst qualities, a theme which preoccupied Kubrick." So, is it better this way, Michael, to have him play a more central role? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's... Well, obviously, it makes sense within the film because you already know that he's the one who gets killed. So I feel like once you've kind of allowed for that beginning to the film, which we already did, it then makes more sense for him to have a more central role within the film because you already know that he, like, where it's leading. So yeah, I would say it works, and it does. I also think like with films, there's like an aspect of efficiency where like you'll often like I can think of like other novel adaptations where they've kind of smashed different characters together to be like, well, you could have two different characters doing something which works in a novel where it's like hundreds of pages and you have time to build up each character, but in the film we've only got like an hour and a half or 2 hours, whatever, so we'll just smash them together. So I feel like that maybe works better.
I think it would be very unsatisfying if it was how it was portrayed in the novel, where Quilty is basically in the background and you only find about him at the end, and all of a sudden he's the guy that has captured Lolita and you don't really know about him. And of course the movie puts him right at the start, so you know about him and you have him more prominently throughout the film.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's better this way. It's more satisfying that it's like, it's him. Yeah.
I have a fun fact about Peter Sellers in this film, which is that because this film was... I thought this film might have made 20 million because I knew this film was a success, and the reason I knew that is because in Doctor Strangelove, Stanley Kubrick's next film, Peter Sellers plays multiple characters, including the eponymous Doctor Strangelove, but he also plays other characters. And I was thinking to myself, that's weird. So I went and looked it up, and I saw in the Wikipedia article, it said that because Lolita had been a success, the studio decided that they would only greenlight Stanley Kubrick's next film if he would also have Peter Sellers in it playing multiple roles. Which is a very, I just find it funny because people complain about studio interference now, but I just find that funny that they had that such a specific mandate of hey, this film was made 5 times its budget back or whatever, and it had Peter Sellers playing multiple different roles in the film. Clearly, the way to make our money, which to be fair, I think Doctor Strangelove probably was a success considering how well known it is. But yeah, I just find that a really funny studio mandate. And I also find it funny because, of course, in this film, Peter Sellers is just playing one character in different disguises, whereas in Doctor Strangelove, he's actually playing different characters, which makes it very confusing because you go from one film where it's it's the same guy, or the same character playing different disguises, and then you go to the other film where it's this, Mike Myers and Austin Powers, the same actor playing different characters. Yeah. So there we go. That's my little extra thing, which I found out, my bit of trivia.
Okay, that's great. So yeah, did you find the twist satisfying? Well, I don't know, the reveal
Yeah.
satisfying at the end? Yeah.
Yes, I did. I thought it was satisfying. And, also I like the fact that, of course, you don't really see it. Like, basically, you only find out about it after, after she's already moved on and has, like, actually got
Yeah.
a happy life with somebody her own age. So
Yeah.
she's just like, oh, yeah, then there's this Peter Sellers guy. And he's just, like, angry about that, which is funny.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. So anyway, Michael, by the way, I just looked up Sue Leon or Sue Lyon. Interestingly, she had a kind of a Lolita experience in her own life. I think she married at 17 years old to a guy who was a guy who was 25 at the time. So
yeah, it's not as bad, but
yeah, oh yeah, it's
more
not
of an
as
Indiana Jones experience.
yeah. No. What
Oh wait, no, sorry, she was too old. Yeah.
Yeah, so that wouldn't be interesting, according to Lucas and Spielberg.
Yeah.
That's not interesting, that. But anyway, so let's get into the old conclusions, Michael. You go first.
Yes. So I was thinking about this film, and like obviously what I said going into it is that the intrigue is good, like the fact that it kind of builds up stuff. It's got that kind of noir energy. We haven't actually used that word at all in this thing yet, but it's got that kind of like this crime, mystery, dark secrets kind of thing going on. But then, yeah, it also has that kind of black comedy aspect with the kind of different actors being interesting and engaging, and that is good. And I do like the performances from all of the characters, and you actually do kind of feel like you're watching real people. The one thing which I think is obviously majorly different between this and the novel, of course, is that in the novel, it's like much more clear that Humbert is a bad guy, and therefore I was kind of thinking like, and I was thinking to myself like, is it objectionable that this film actually makes a joke out of this and like plays it like a comedy rather than, for example, being a deep dark condemnation of Humbert and how evil he is, and the kind of wider, and obviously another example of this is how they don't really show the kind of psychological damage to Lolita, so they don't show that. I was thinking, is that objectionable? And I kind of thought, I came to the conclusion in my head that this film is good provided that you clear the low barrier for entry of already understanding that paedophilia is wrong. Because if you already understand that paedophilia is wrong, then you can just engage with this film. Thank you. Thank you. You like me. You really like... But yeah, you can engage with this film as like, oh, look, it's a kind of absurdist black comedy thing about this thing that we already know is wrong. We don't need like to be lectured to by a film about how bad what this guy's doing is, and that makes it more entertaining. And yeah, so with that said, that's why I like the film. I think I'll rate it a middling 7. That's what I like.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm gonna put this higher.
Yeah, okay.
I'm gonna give it an 8.5.
Ooh, so fancy.
Yeah, I know, because I really enjoy these kind of dark comedies, and like you said before, Michael, it's like, should this have been a dark comedy? Considering especially that the novel deals with Lolita's abuse and how she feels, and it makes out Humbert to be a bad guy. Should you turn that into a comedy? And I think why not? As long as you know that sexual abuse is bad and paedophilia is bad, then yes, I think that's fine to make a joke out of it, highlighting how ridiculous you consider this character Humbert. This is a guy who has a lot of respect. He's this esteemed professor. How ridiculous it is that this guy with so much respect is driving around this child and he's worried he's going to get caught by the police. He is lowered himself so much, and he's a ridiculous character, and it does not portray him well at all, and it just highlights the absurdity of basically sacrificing everything in your life to just have this kid who you're in a sexual relationship with. Again, him he's running away from all these places, and he's he's a shell of a man at the end of the movie, isn't he?
Yes.
You consider him at the start how confident he was when he walked into the household in Ramsdale, and at the end of the movie he's just so pathetic and whiny, and it's it's a comedy movie which of course mocks the situation, it's a dark comedy which mocks the situation, but also it mocks this guy. He's pathetic again, so that is important to talk about as well in terms of, should this subject be turned into a comedy? Yes, and I think it's done very well. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. This is an 8.5 out of 10 for me. And yeah, that's it. What are we doing next week, Michael?
Well, next week we're doing, we're still on the comedies. And I think it would be fair to call this film a black comedy, but perhaps it's maybe more of a yellow comedy, and it is, of course, Minions. So very very good
fucking
film.
Minions, because of the Minions, the Rise of Gru. Yeah, so this movie Lolita was very interesting, a very controversial movie at the time. It's always great with movies like Lolita to see, where art which pushes the boundaries, which goes further than traditional society's, constraints, basically. And that's why I like this movie, and that's why I love Minions as well.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And we will see that next week. So anyway, who have you been, Michael?
I've been Michael.
I've been Luke. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Goodbye.